erupsi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
Hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
Dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030. Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai 0 emisi di tahun 2050.
Ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim. Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia 2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.
Sinta Bayong.
Saya Krisdayanti.
Saya Kalista Iskandar.
Saya Reza Radian. Saya Ciko Jericho.
Saya Chelsea Islan.
Saya Cinta Laura Kiel.
Saya Dian Sastrowardoyo.
Saya Wulan Guritno.
Saya Julia Stel.
Saya Yoshi Sudarso.
Saya sangat semangat menyongsong
Indonesia
Indonesia Emas
100 tahunnya merdeka pada tahun
2045 nanti.
Kita semua di Indonesia bermimpi dan menginginkan agar bisa mencapai tujuan Indonesia Emas di tahun 2045.
Sungguh suatu capaian sejarah yang indah
Dan luar biasa dalam perjalanan bangsa kita.
Nggak kebayang betapa hebatnya Indonesia Emas nanti.
Insya Allah pada tahun 2045 saya akan mulai mewariskan Indonesia kepada putra-putri saya.
Di usia NKRI yang 100 tahun nanti,
Saya ingin kita semua hidup dalam Indonesia yang Pancasilais,
Yang modern,
Maju,
makmur,
sejahtera,
Hijau, adil, aman,
Bebas korupsi.
demokratis,
dan tentunya bersatu.
Tujuan tersebut bukan tanpa tantangan.
Ancaman terbesar di tahun 2045 bukanlah pandemi.
Bukan lagi kemiskinan atau kebodohan.
bukan separatisme,
bukan perang nuklir.
Bukan invasi militer dari luar.
Ancaman terbesar bangsa Indonesia
di tahun 2045 nanti,
the mother of all problems adalah
Pemanasan global.
di mana suhu bumi rata-rata akan naik
3-4 derajat Celcius.
Itu adalah suhu terpanas sepanjang sejarah manusia. Suhu terpanas di bumi kita yang sudah berusia 4,5 miliar tahun.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia Emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
Hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana.
polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030. Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai 0 emisi di tahun 2050.
Ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim. Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia 2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.
Good morning and welcome to FBCI's Ambassadors Roundtable, Raising Climate Ambitions for a Climate Secure Future. This roundtable is brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia in cooperation by EU Delegation in Indonesia on the occasion of European Union Climate Diplomacy Week. I first would like to greet our participants and viewers who are watching from our YouTube's live stream. I was told this morning that around more than 1,500 people have registered for this event, and they don't just come from Indonesia, but also from some 40 countries, including countries such as Vietnam, India, France, Turkey, Colombia, and even Greece. So welcome and good morning from Jakarta. Today's Ambassadors Roundtable is joined by ambassadors and representatives from 17 countries. It will also be moderated by Dr. Dino Patijalal, the founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia. The roundtable will address key issues on the state of global climate commitments, including preparations for what is expected to be a pivotal COP, or the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow this November. Ranging from questions such as whether or not COP26 will deliver, whether or not we can keep the 1.5-degree goal alive, and whether or not we can reach a net zero world. A kind notice to all of our viewers who are watching that we are also providing a Bahasa Indonesia interpretation for today's event. The link for the Bahasa Indonesia audio shall be sent to you from the YouTube live stream. Kami juga menyediakan penerjemah bahasa Indonesia untuk acara hari ini, dan link untuk audio bahasa Indonesia dan bahasa Inggris telah dikirimkan dalam YouTube chat box live stream. Now, before we head to the discussion, it is my honor to welcome first His Excellency Mahendra Siregar, Indonesia's Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, to open today's roundtable. Without further ado, Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Bapak Dino Patijalal, Chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, Excellencies, Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, participants to the forum, a very good morning to all of you. I wish to thank the Foreign Policy Community for inviting me to this roundtable. I do welcome the opportunity to address global challenges arising from climate change. Indeed, together with the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change is the defining issue of our time. From the outset, I wish to stress that Indonesia is emerging out of the COVID pandemic well-positioned to restore and indeed accelerate economic growth, to achieve our social agenda, as well as meeting and exceeding our commitments on climate change. I have a very optimistic message to deliver, and it is based on 3 pillars that not only mitigate climate change at the global level, but they also mapping a bright future for our nation. Balancing out economic and social growth in harmony with the environment. That include the protection of our heritage, pristine environment, and biodiversity for the benefit of future generations. First, Indonesia is transitioning toward real new normal life in COVID-19 endemic situation. In terms of the pandemic, Indonesia has faced daunting challenges, bearing in mind the size, geographical condition, and the density of our populations and the associated pressure on our health facilities, especially in outlying regions. Throughout this crisis, our government has been mindful of the need to optimize available resources, to harness our health sector to provide guidance to our people, while at the same time ensuring, to the extent possible, that the economy of our country did not shut down with the social consequences that this would entail. Second, as of today, we have almost fully recovered from the devastating impact of the Delta variant, reaching our lowest point in August 2021, with now around 5 persons infected daily per 1 million population, compared to a global average of more than 100. Our inoculation rate is 2 million jabs per day, and this will be increased to 2.5 million very soon. So far, we have completed 160 million jabs, and at the rate of 2 to 2.5 million a day, Indonesia will have, by the end of this year, delivered the first jab to our entire targeted population, with approximately half receiving the second jab. Meanwhile, the country's hospital bed occupancy ratio is below 10%, and our PCR test is around 300,000 per day. We hope to reopen Bali for international flights sometimes this month and choose selected countries of origin for the flights. As for Bali itself, we have 100% first vaccine and around 60% second vaccine to date. We will implement a travel and tourism bubble protocol based on mutual recognition and digital tracking. Second, Indonesia's economy is rebounding strongly, supported by sustainable factors. Indonesia's export value for the first time in 10 years is set to exceed $200 billion by year's end. This will project Indonesia into the top 30 largest exporting countries in the global economy. In addition, there are positive signs that investment is set to exceed the annual target, also supported by an optimistic PMI index of 52 and approaching 55 in September and October. Indonesia expects that growth this year would achieve at least 4%, with much higher levels being forecast into the foreseeable future. We are also managing to orientate and gradually transition our economy toward optimizing renewable resources while mitigating the diverse consequences of energy crisis being witnessed elsewhere. While this transition is essential, we should not overlook that it took over 100 years to fully develop fossil fuels, and that within this sector, considerable progress has also been made in introducing environmentally friendly technologies and products. In this context, perhaps it is appropriate to refer to the German proverb, not to throw out the baby with the bath water. Third, Indonesia is on track to meet and exceed our commitment of reducing emissions by 29% by 2030 and up to 41% with international support. The 41% carbon reduction is equivalent to eliminating 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which is 5 times larger than the UK government's 200 million ton greenhouse gas reduction target of 50% by 2030. Additionally, Indonesia have also submitted a long-term strategy for low carbon and climate resilience 2050, which includes setting a target of net carbon sink for forest and land use sector by 2030, the first of its kind in the world. In this context, Indonesia is taking a global lead in sustainable forestry management, in which forestry will contribute to a large net carbon storage. This would mean transforming a sector that previously accounted for 60% of our emission into part of the solution with global significance. While Indonesia's past has witnessed deforestation, forest fires, and other related disasters, the situation has been turned around. Through robust regulation, monitoring, law enforcement, and community empowerment, we have achieved significant reduction of deforestation and forest fires. Indonesia's deforestation has reached its lowest point in 20 years. Forest fires have been reduced as much as 82% in 2020, when parts of the Americas, Europe, and Australia are experiencing the highest increases. The key to our success is to put climate action within the framework of sustainable development, to take on the ground concrete action, and to ensure that conservation and growth are not mutually exclusive, but supportive of each other. There are also several flanking initiatives worthy of note. We are accelerating our energy transition process and strengthening our climate financing through innovative means, including developing carbon market mechanism. Indonesia has set a target of net zero emission by 2060, if not sooner. We are updating our national strategic electricity plan rigorously, and will soon be able to measure progress within a clear framework. There's a pleasing development whereby the Indonesian private sector is increasingly supportive of our government policies. As an illustration, while wildfires have raged throughout the developed world, increasing substantially CO2 emission, the Desa Makmur Peduli Api, or Prosperous Village Fire-Free program, supported by the palm oil industry, has assisted the government in reducing forest and land fires. Excellencies, participants, the COP26 next month will be an important milestone for the world to agree in several key issues, including Article 6 on market and non-market cooperation, long-term finance, and others. These issues need to be concluded this year for effective and full implementation of the Paris Agreement. Indeed, the biggest challenge to the Paris Agreement is non-fulfillment of the means of implementation, particularly climate financing and technological cooperation. Without clarity and progress on the means of implementation, we run the risk of losing trust in the multilateral process, which is the only feasible framework to tackle climate change and other global issues that require coordinated action. And I hope this event will contribute not only to heighten awareness of global climate emergencies, but also on moving beyond rhetoric and transforming challenges into opportunities. Thank you, and I wish you all a productive discussion.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing that message with us and also sharing what Indonesia has done in terms of its climate commitments. Now, without further ado, I will pass over the floor to Dr. Dino Patijala as today's moderator and FPCI chairman to officially open the roundtable. Dino, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Esther, and again, thank you to Vice Minister Mahendra Siregar for that very important statement. And I like the fact that all the contents of his speech were rich in policy statements, and this is exactly what we want to do today. Not rhetorics, but really policies, because policies reflect climate actions. So today I'm very pleased to give the floor next to Ambassador Vincent Piquet, who heads the EU delegation to Indonesia. Ambassador Piquet, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much indeed, Bagdino, for the floor, and let me greet His Excellency Mahendra Siregar, the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, for his participation and for his interesting statement. Greet also Ibu Laxmi Devanti, Director General for Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment. Very specially, of course, greet all the fellow ambassadors that take part in this event. Ambassadors of EU member states, Finland, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, and Sweden. And other non-EU ambassadors, of course, UK as COP26 chair, and then in alphabetical order, Brazil, Egypt, India, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Norway, United States and Vietnam. Selamat pagi to everybody participating as in the audience, wherever you are. We're speaking from Jakarta, but we're reaching out indeed to the whole of the nation of Indonesia and beyond. Today, the EU and the EU member states are launching our annual EU Climate Diplomacy Week, Indonesia. It's a week that will feature 15 events with EU and Indonesian participants, and we will reach out to a very broad selection of partners across Indonesia in all areas for climate action. And I would like to thank most cordially Pak Dino and all his enthusiastic team of the IPCI for supporting us in organizing this pre-event, which brings together so many colleagues from different countries, as well as the senior representative of the Vice Minister of the Government of Indonesia. We're on the eve of the COP26, and there is no doubt that it's a major moment for all of us to reunite and commit. The latest IPCC climate report of July has once again reminded us of how serious the threat of the climate crisis is. The IPCC messages are very stark. First, reducing the world is warming up rapidly due to human influence. And the only way to resolve that is by reducing greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050, says the IPCC. Only that will halt global warming and keep the 1.5 degrees centigrade temperature rise set in the Paris Agreement intact. Second message of the IPCC is that we all need to act, no exception, and with more ambition and with a clear implementable action. Otherwise, we will not meet the global commitments. And the last message from the IPCC was that a number of effects of climate change are now unavoidable. And we have to accept the fact that some of things are simply going to be there regardless of what we do. And we have to adapt and mitigate such impacts. The EU is doing that for its own European continent. We submitted to the UNFCCC our update for the nationally determined contributions. It's a target that of at least 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2030 compared to the year 1990. And that makes our target probably the most ambitious target that there are. There's also a strategy for the long term, and that long-term strategy includes our ambition to achieve climate neutrality by the year 2050. This is ambitious. It will be tough, but the 2050 climate neutrality target has now been cast into law, and we've got to do it to mitigate climate change domestically and internationally. The last measure that we put into place was published just a couple of months ago in July, when the European Commission presented a package of legislative and policy proposals to deliver the COP26 reduction target mentioned just before. The package of proposals is called Fit for 55, and the 55 stands for the minus 55% cut that we will be achieving by 2030. And taking all these measures together, I believe we can objectively say that the EU is taking a share, that the EU is taking decisive action towards climate neutrality by the year 2050 and is living up to the commitment it made under the Paris Accord. Of course, dealing with climate requires a truly global effort, as agreed in Paris, and that's why the EU is calling other nations to be equally ambitious and undertake the same type of structural transition in their countries, in their territories, similar to the EU's. And with enhanced 2030 emission targets and with long-term strategies towards climate neutrality by 2050. Now, we will be discussing that today in this wonderful webinar, and I conclude my remarks with two final observations. First of all, the very broad international participation in today's panel sends a very strong signal, I think, that climate action is a broad common concern, regardless of our different perspectives or different starting points. We have a wonderful lineup of ambassadors speaking here today, and it is only because of even in Zoom, the limited space on the panel that not more joined in. Secondly, I think I can speak on behalf of everybody here by saying that all countries who participate, and also those who couldn't join this panel, they want to cooperate with Indonesia. Indonesia is a vital partner, given its economic weight, given its potential to achieve, and as the Vice Minister said, even overachieve its 2030 target, and given the now stated net zero goal by 2060, and the crucial phase following that year is, of course, or sooner. So we look forward to our dialogue with Indonesia and with all partners here to make that agenda work, to support one another mutually, and invite everyone to join in the EU Climate Diplomacy Week 2021, starting today. Thank you very much indeed. Terima kasih banyak.
Vincent, for your statements, and FVCI actually appreciates Europe's bold and consistent position on climate change, including your strong leadership. Yeah. So now we will move to some statements from 4 ambassadors to help us contextualize the discussions and debate on climate change. They will be given 2 or 3 minutes to make their statement, and they will come from Ambassador Benedetto Latteri from Italy, Ambassador Kanasugi Kenji from Japan, Ambassador Owen Jenkins from the United Kingdom, and Ambassador Sung Yong Kim from United States of America. We begin with Ambassador Benedetto.
Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for not being with you online today, but in this very moment I am on a flight. Thanks to Dino Pattijalal and his team at the FPCI for organizing this roundtable on the climate issues in occasion of the EU Climate Diplomacy Week. I wish you all a great success today. I would like to address 3 specific topics. Italy's specific commitment with regard to the issue of climate change, both as co-host of COP26 and as presidency of the G20. The lessons learned at the Youth for Climate Driving Ambition event that recently took place in Milano. The way forward towards COP26 in Glasgow. In co-chairing COP26, Italy shares with the UK same goals and ambitions. First, securing a global net zero by mid-century and keeping 1.5 degrees within reach, which are targets that can be both achieved with a range of actions. Among them, accelerating the phase-out of coal, curtailing deforestation, speeding up the switch of electrical vehicles, and encouraging investment in renewables. Adaptation to protect communities and natural habitats is another goal. At COP26, we need to work together to avoid loss of homes, jobs, livelihood, and even lives. A third goal is climate finance mobilization. That means that developed countries must make good on their promise to mobilize at least $100 billion in climate finance per year by 2020. Our final goal is work together to deliver. We can only rise to the challenges of the climate crisis through strong-willed, effective collaboration.
Thank you very much, Benedetto. Now I'm giving the floor to Ambassador of Japan, Kanasugi Kenji-san. Please.
Selamat pagi, good morning everyone. His Excellency Mr. Mahendra Siruga, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Dinopati, nice meeting you, fellow ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to introduce Japan's domestic and international efforts to address climate change. On the domestic front, in October last year, Japan committed to reduce GHG emissions to net zero by 2050 to realize a carbon neutral, decarbonized society. And at the climate summit in April this year, Japan expressed its midterm target to reduce its GHG emissions by 46% or possibly by 50% by 2030, compared with the level of 2013. Also, we amended the existing law in June this year, making the target of net zero by 2050 as a kind of legally binding target. On the international front, I think countries in the Indo-Pacific where the economy is growing are the key, and we need to encourage them to promote the transition to decarbonization. Japan put emphasis on 4 areas. Number 1, decarbonization projects supported by the Joint Crediting Mechanism, JCM. Number 2, bilateral cooperation through official development assistance. Number 3, support to the formulation of a roadmap by each country towards decarbonization. And finally, number 4, support through international funds such as Green Climate Fund. To be more concrete, in Indonesia, Japan is cooperating for the development of monitoring capacity such as GHG emission database of Indonesian central and local government through ODA. And also Indonesia is one of the most closely cooperating JCM partner countries for Japan. And at the COP26, I think it's most important to conclude the negotiation of the rulebook of the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. We strongly believe that implementing the market mechanism under Article 6 will promote efficient and additional emission reductions. Under new Prime Minister Kishida Fumio, who came into the office recently, Japan will further contribute to global challenges of climate change and cooperate with international partners for the success of COP26. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Kenji-san, for your brief but very substantive statement on Japan's policies on climate change. I now have the pleasure to give the floor to Ambassador Owen Jenkins from the United Kingdom. Hello, Owen, how are you? Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Pagino. Very well, and it's nice to see you. Thank you very much for the invitation to take part in this important roundtable, and let me thank FPCI in particular for all of the work it's done on climate change in Indonesia. Let me appreciate the presence here today of His Excellency Bapak Mahendra Siregar, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, and to all of my fellow ambassadors. I hope they will forgive me if I don't name each one, but that will take all of my time, I think. I think it's important to start by paying tribute to what Indonesia has already done but Mahendra set out very clearly and in a very positive way Indonesia's impressive ambition in trying to tackle climate change. The commitment to net zero by 2060 or even sooner, and the recent commitment to make the forestry and land use sector a net carbon sink by 2030 are hugely important commitments, and we are delighted to be working closely with Indonesia in the forestry sector, including through co-chairing the Forestry, Agriculture and Commodities Trade Dialogue, which will be showcased at COP, where Indonesia's progress, I think, is a model for others to follow. We're also delighted that the United Kingdom is working with Indonesia in the energy sector to accelerate the transition away from the dirtiest fossil fuels, including coal, and towards renewable energy. And the Friends of Indonesia Renewable Energy Dialogues, which we co-chair with Indonesia, is, I think, another model of multi-stakeholder engagement to really move away from pollution towards a cleaner future. And it's that transition which really drives the United Kingdom's chairmanship, along with Italy, of COP26 this year. Ambassador Latteri has already set out some of the key goals that we have, which are achieving high ambition, mobilizing finance to delivering it, protecting the nature-based solutions that we need to achieve things, and protecting the most vulnerable. We know those are hugely important. The United Kingdom is committed to playing our part in doing that, and we have cut our emissions already nearly by 50% on a 1990 baseline, while still growing our economy by 70%, proving that clean growth is possible. But we know this is not enough. As His Excellency, the Vice Minister, pointed out, the United Kingdom's emissions are relatively small in comparison to others, and we welcome the commitment of Indonesia, a potential climate superpower, as my ministers have regularly said, to playing its part in the transition towards a more climate-friendly world. In just 1 month, we will be coming to the end of COP26, which we've been looking forward to for so long. At that point, we need to have accelerated the globe's climate ambition by 4 to 6 times, if the science tells us correctly. We need to make sure that we are on track to avoid dangerous climate change and to achieve the Paris goals of keeping temperature rises below 2 degrees and, if possible, to 1.5 degrees. I look forward to working with all colleagues on the call here to achieving that goal and to supporting Indonesia in its own ambitious efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Owen, and we wish you all the best for the COP26 in Glasgow. And by the way, FECI, working with your embassy, has arranged a national video contest for the that COP26. So thank you. And there was a lot of good ideas from the young people in that video contest. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to Ambassador Sung Kim of United States of America. Ambassador Sung Kim, the floor is yours. And hi, how are you? Good to see you, Ambassador. Yeah.
It's great to see you, Ambassador Dino.
Yeah.
Selamat pagi, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very important forum. With only 21 days until the COP26 summit in Glasgow, I cannot think of a timelier issue than our topic today. Let me first thank Ambassador Dino Jalal and the FPCI for organizing this event, and of course Vice Foreign Minister Siregar, as well as my fellow ambassadors for sharing their wisdom with us today. As my fellow ambassadors have already emphasized, we are at a crisis point when it comes to climate. It is the greatest existential threat facing our world today, so we have to act now. And the 2020s is the decisive decade for combating the crisis. This is the decade we must act to keep global temperature increases within reach of the Paris climate target of less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. The Biden administration is committed to meeting this challenge and has announced bold policies at home and abroad to implement that commitment. In April, President Biden pledged the United States to commit $5.7 billion per year in international public financing to help developing nations tackle the climate crisis. Last month, President Biden announced a doubling of that commitment to $11.4 billion annually. We have also announced domestic policies aimed to modernize U.S. cities with climate-resilient infrastructure and build a clean energy future that creates millions of jobs. The United States, however, cannot do this alone. We're prepared to work with other countries to help them chart their own pathways to prosperity built on the clean technologies of the future. And here in Indonesia, I am pleased that our embassy is working closely with Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry and his team to engage the government of Indonesia. We have established a high-level bilateral climate change working group, and Vice Foreign Minister Siregar is the Indonesian co-chair of that process, and accompanying task forces which form the basis of our coordination with the Indonesian government. Through our U.S. Agency for International Development projects, we will also invest $80 billion over the next 4 years to support the transition to clean energy systems and help conserve Indonesia's carbon-rich forests and peatlands. As others have mentioned, Indonesia deserves great credit for progress it has already made, especially in the forestry and land use sectors, to curb and halt deforestation to the lowest level in 20 years. We also applaud Indonesia's decision to participate in the US-EU-backed Global Methane Pledge to take steps to reduce methane gas emissions, becoming the first developing country in the G20 to join the pledge. The pledge will be launched officially during the COP26. And speaking of COP26, we hope to leave Glasgow with the world more on track to keeping global warming at less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. As of now, 55% of the world's economies have made pledges that would achieve the 1.5 degree target. Much work obviously remains to be done to reach the other 45%, but we are determined to address this climate crisis together. As President Biden has said, nations that work together to invest in a cleaner economy will reap rewards for their citizens. Thank you, and terima kasih.
Thank you, Ambassador Sung Kim. And I think we all agree that one of the factors that is changing the dynamics towards COP26 in Glasgow is the re-energized U.S. Climate policies under the Biden administration, and also the leadership shown by President Biden in advancing climate diplomacy. So thank you for that. We are now coming to the discussion part of our session, and this is where we get into a roundtable where I will ask ambassadors questions, and it's an open question that would invite answers from any ambassadors that wish to do so, right? And by the way, this is an unusual event whereby, you imagine having a party and everybody you invite are coming, right? We've never seen a session, right, with so many ambassadors coming. So I want to say thank you to all the ambassadors, and it also reflects how much this is really an international concern, an international issue. So I hope the public in Indonesia and other countries appreciate this as well. Let me begin with the first questions, and ambassadors who want to answer, please raise your hand feature in your Zoom, right? So, limiting global heating to 1.5 degrees requires not just ambitious net zero commitments, 2050 or 2060, but also, more importantly, ambitious targets by 2030, because what we do in the next 10 years really affects what happens by 2050, right? So I want to invite, what are your thoughts on this? How do we enhance carbon sinks, and what kind of policies and incentives have your government been implementing or plan to implement? Yeah. Please, anyone? I think Armando from Mexico, Ambassador Armando, if you want to respond to this, most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak, sahabat Dinopati. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay, I will try to explain in less than 2 minutes the situation in Latin America and Mexico. First, regarding the region. According to UN figures, Latin America and the Caribbean is responsible for less than 10% of total greenhouse gas emissions. However, it is one of the most vulnerable regions to climate change in terms of heat waves, floods, storms, water stress, droughts, fires, and diseases. Only 3 weeks ago, in the Declaration of Mexico City, the leaders of Latin America and the Caribbean, among other statements, ratified their highest political commitment during COP16 in the fight against climate change and its effects, urged developed countries to comply with their financing commitments, and committed themselves to combat climate change and increasing climate ambition in accordance with the Paris Agreement, the principles of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. Now, regarding Mexico, Mexico's greenhouse gas emissions represent 1.7% of global emissions. And the fight against climate change is one of Mexico's multilateral foreign policy priorities. In December 2020, Mexico submitted its nationally determined contribution, endorsing its mitigation commitments and presenting a more ambitious adaptation component. Mexico committed to reduce unconditionally 22% of GHG and 51% of black carbon emissions. Also, its conditional target will be 36% for GHG and 70% for black carbon emissions. These actions are aligned with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Finally, regarding the COP16, Mexico believes that a successful conference requires, number one, to reach a decision on international carbon markets, number two, to continue working on a strengthened transparency framework, number three, to increase high-level attention to the overall goal of adaptation, number four, to ensure that in a post-COVID world, a long-term climate finance target matches the needs of developing countries to meet the Paris Agreement, and finally, number five, to ensure sufficient and easily accessible financing for adaptation. Terima kasih banyak, teman-teman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Armando. I think I see France, Ambassador Olivier. How are you? Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
And by the way, he has the best French food in the whole of Indonesia, right? So.
But sustainable food, I can assure you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dino, and congratulations for this very interesting moment. I think COP26 arrives at a decisive moment, and the success of this conference depends, I think, on three results. The first, a necessary increase of the parties' commitment to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees. Vincent Pickett mentioned the IPCC's reports, which have shown that a limitation to 1.5 degree increase in temperature rather than 2 degrees can have huge impacts on climate change, biodiversity loss, and environment. This implies to aim to carbon neutrality by 2050. France and the EU, as has been said, have committed to reduce their net emissions by at least 55% by 2030 and to reach zero emission by 2050. The aim of net zero emission by 2060 announced by Indonesia is ambitious, but we are ready to pursue all needed support with Indonesia in order to move to the target closer to 2050. The second important thing, I think, for the success of the COP26 depends on the strengthening of climate finance. We have to increase the global financial effort in order to reach annually $100 billion from 2020 to 2025 in favor of climate in developing countries. And France is committed to increase its own contribution to international climate finance to 6 billion euros annually from 2021 to 2025, and to dedicate 1/3 to adaptation. And the third and last point, COP26 success depends on the conclusion of the rule book of the Paris Agreement, and especially the Article 6 concerning the carbon market mechanism. Thank you, Dino. Makasih.
Yeah. Thank you, Olivier, and I appreciate your statement that France will will increase the commitment to 6 billion, and 1/3 will be for adaptation. That is very important. I see Ambassador Sung Kim wants to say something. Please, Ambassador. Yes.
Great, thank you. As you noted, Ambassador Dino, this is a top priority for the Biden administration. In fact, from day one of his administration, President Biden set the course for the United States to tackle the climate crisis at home and abroad, reaching net zero emissions economy-wide by no later than 2050. He also launched a whole-of-government process to develop policies that will achieve our new emissions target of a 50 to 52% reduction in net greenhouse gas pollution emissions from 2005 levels by 2030. The U.S. is seeking to have a carbon pollution-free power sector by 2035 with 100% carbon pollution-free electricity. And I'm proud that since 1990, the management of forests and other land has acted as a net sink of carbon dioxide in the United States. which means that more CO2 is removed from the atmosphere and stored in plants and trees than is emitted. This carbon sink offset is about 12% of total emissions in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope those important technological innovations will also be shared with the rest of the world, including with Indonesia. I'm sure Senator Kerry and Pak Luhut are talking actively about that. Finland, Ambassador Jari. How are you, Jari? Yeah.
I'm fine. Thank you for this opportunity, and selamat pagi for everyone as well. You asked that what is your government doing? My government has decided that we should be carbon neutral already by 2035. So one way to kind of like accelerate the target is to set.
Is it?
I think it is, but being a humble person, I don't know. Maybe another country, and of course we are very happy that somebody would put a bet even faster than us. So that is one thing. So it requires all the sectors to be very active in reducing their carbon emissions. Then one concrete thing, actually, we are partnering with Indonesia. It was an initiative by Finland to form a coalition of finance ministers for climate actions. And for the moment, Finland and Indonesia, we're the co-chairs. There's Annika Saarikko from Finland and Sri Mulyani from Indonesia. And they're gonna and this coalition has now a little bit more than 60 members. And the idea is very practically to mainstream the climate policies with the finance policies, because the finance ministers are the ones at the end of the day who are deciding the policies. I mean, at least introducing the policies for example, for the recovery. So that is one concrete thing. And then the next meeting, actually, it's in the auspices of this COP26, to be precise, the 3rd of November in the UK. Then I would like to talk a little bit about the private sector also, because you mentioned innovations as well, this American colleague. So it's very important that the private sector comes in with their innovations. And Pak Mohendra, he was mentioning that soon Bali is going to be open for tourism, and then of course the more sustainable the tourism is, the better it is. And there's one Finnish company that has been the forerunner for green diesel and green fuel for the airplanes. So I hope that this kind of innovation work is going further. I stop here and thank for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Jari. And by the way, and on behalf of the people of Indonesia, thank you to Finland for helping us resolve the 30-year Aceh conflict. Yeah. So I'm very pleased with that. Yeah. Next, we have Ambassador Lars of Denmark. I've been to Denmark many times. In fact, my best man when I got married was a Danish guy. And I remember meeting, I think, your prime minister at some point. He said that Denmark's economy doubled, but its energy transition remained the same. So I think maybe that has something to do with everybody rides a bicycle in Denmark. Yeah. But Ambassador Lars, go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Dino, and actually greetings from a cold and rainy Denmark here. I'm not sure I can recommend going here to anybody right now, but anyway, good to see you here online. So my comment actually comes, I think, in good combination of what you just said, Dino, but also what Jari said. We have a 70% reduction target by 2030. The only way to get to that is, as Jari said, to go through sectorial dialogues with each sector, trying to identify where do we have not only the cost, but also the opportunities to grow while being more climate friendly. At the energy sector was maybe the first prime example there. Our energy conglomerate has actually diminished their climate footprint by 97% in 13 years, and by that actually doubled their profitability. And I think right now we're going through the motion in different sectors. For example, this weekend there was a big political agreement on agriculture, one of the main polluters or emitters of Denmark. And actually there, they also agreed with the partners to go to a 60% reduction of climate, and believing that that will also bring more possibilities. And I think that's my key point also for Indonesia. I think as Indonesia is going away from only seeing climate as one policy area, to see that as a more broad, you could say, covering umbrella for all other policy areas, and having dialogues within different sectors. I think there'll be a lot of opportunities to be identified there, where Indonesia can really play an important role and can contribute also to the global innovation here, and thereby also create jobs. So I think this is a process that I think we all, meaning all ambassadors here, are keen to also support. Let me just mention one, that would be global shipping, for example. We have a strong commitment to decarbonize the global shipping industry here. And I think just looking at a map and looking at the resource of Indonesia, I think Indonesia has a very important role to play there as well. That really could be interesting. So I'll leave it there, Dino, and thanks so much for inviting me here, and hope you will come back here soon. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador Lars. I'm going to highlight that decarbonizing global shipping. I hope the Pak Luhut and everybody is also working on that, because, as you know, Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world. Next, we have Ambassador of India, Ambassador Manoj Bharti. Yeah, Ambassador.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ambassador Dino. You mentioned about the large participation in this. Thank you very much for letting me have the space to speak out. Climate change is a lived reality for millions around the world. Their lives and livelihoods are already facing its adverse consequences. Perhaps that is the reason why there is so much of interest in this subject, and also because of the nearness to this big event, COP26 in Glasgow, that we are all so keen to hear others and put our own points of views. As far as India is concerned, India's per capita carbon footprint is 60% lower than the global average. And this is also because lifestyle is still rooted in sustainable traditional practices. India not only is on track to achieve its Paris Agreement targets, but to exceed them beyond expectations. We have reduced our emission intensity by 21% over 2005 levels. Our solar capacity has grown from 2.63 gigawatts in 2014 to 36 gigawatts in 2020. Our now renewable energy capacity is the fourth largest in the world. It will reach 175 gigawatts before 2022. We have even more ambitious target, 450 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by 2030. I would like to highlight here that India has been emphasizing on what we say differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities, CBDR. And I hope that we move forward in this direction in our next international meeting in Glasgow. The responsibility should be shared in that manner where the per capita consumption is taken into account. I think I'll stop here because I see my time is up. Maybe I'll speak later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Manoj. I now would like to ask Ambassador Ina Lapel, Ambassador Designate Ina Lapel from Germany to share her response. Please, Ina, how are you? Yeah.
Fine, thanks. Selamat pagi, Pak Dino. Thank you very much for bringing all of us together for this important meeting. To come to your question quickly, in addition to what has already been said about the EU, Germany has additionally decided to strengthen its national targets in the revised Federal Climate Change Act. We have set a higher national mitigation target of 65% for the years until 2030 compared to 1990, and the goal of net climate neutrality already by 2045. We have also adopted a pathway to reach these targets, including phasing out coal by 2038 latest, investing in renewable energies, and by supporting the industry and private sector on their path to decarbonization. This will be promoted through financial support, an enabling regulatory environment, as well as scaling up research in innovation and new technologies. We also see CO2 pricing as an important mechanism to reduce emissions. And since the Vice Minister mentioned the issue, this might also be a good opportunity to point out that as of this year, Germany has decided to increase its budget allocation for climate finance from currently 5 billion euro to 6 billion euro annually by at least 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ina, and also I want to welcome you, by the way, for our public. Ina has just arrived in Indonesia, and we wish you all the best, and we look forward to great cooperation between Germany and Indonesia. And we look forward to the day when Germany can double the climate finance, just like the US did, right? Now, I would like to give the floor to another newcomer, recently arrived ambassador of Norway, Ruth Giveren. Yeah. Ruth, how are you? And please, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak Dino, and first of all, thank you to you and your colleagues at the FPCI for organizing this very timely event. I also would like to thank His Excellency Vice Minister Mahendra Siregar for also outlining some of Indonesia's great achievements in this area, in particular in the forestry sector, and efforts that we stand ready to support in the years and months to come. Also, thanks fellow ambassadors for sharing your thoughts, your perspectives, and thank you for this opportunity to share some of Norway's perspectives as well. Now, first of all, ambition on NDCs is at the core of COP26. And hence, it is crucial that all countries enhance their targets in line with the Paris principles of progression and highest possible ambition. For Norway, this means that we were one of the first countries to update our NDC in February 2020. We stepped up our targets from 40% to at least 50% and towards 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. But this is not only about national ambition. We also need to realize that we have a broader ambition landscape to address. And this includes a higher ambition in ensuring more support to developing countries for stronger climate policies. Here on this point, we recognize that climate finance is a crucial issue and one of our top priorities for COP26 is a successful, balanced outcome on climate finance. Developed countries have confirmed that they stand by their collective finance commitments, including the 100 billion goal from 2020 through to 2025, and Norway is committed to contribute to this. We look forward to the start of the important deliberations on setting new collective quantified goal on finance from 2025 onwards. A key priority for COP26 is the negotiations on market cooperation, Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Glasgow must ensure the long-term integrity of Article 6 cooperation. And to make this happen, we need rules to ensure environmental integrity and sustainable development. The UK COP26 presidency has given Norway and Singapore the mandate to progress work on this matter at the ministerial level. Climate adaptation is another important area. The latest IPCC report told us that climate change is already affecting every region on Earth in multiple ways. And the changes we experience will increase with additional warming. It affects lives, livelihoods, economies, landscapes, ecosystems, and communities. And responding to a changing climate is not only something we must plan for, it is something that we urgently need to respond to collectively. To advance adaptation, we need to continue doing practical work that matters for the communities. And we recognize that support must be enhanced, particularly for the most vulnerable. Too little finance globally has been allocated to adaptation so far. Terima kasih. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruth, and we're going to continue that discussion on climate finance in this discussion. And by the way, I'm really sorry about the unfortunate cancellation of Indonesia-Norway forestry moratorium agreement. And you know, I'm sure one day you can share with us a lot of insights about that. But I'm saying I'm sorry because actually we worked on this during my time. You know, when I was at the palace, one of the great achievements that we did was that agreement, the Indonesia-Norway agreement, and I was very much part of that process. And so I hope this is something that you know. Well, I know it's final, but I hope the cooperation between Indonesia and Norway in other parts of climate policy will be enhanced. Yeah. So now I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Kenji-san from Japan. Ambassador Kenji, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just would like to elaborate on our credit trading mechanism, which started since 2013. There are about over 200 projects with 17 partner countries, mainly from the Indo-Pacific, of course, including Indonesia. Accumulated the GHG emission reduction currently amounts to 20 million tons of CO2 by 2030, but we aim to reduce 100 million tons of CO2. And in the case of Indonesia, a project for a small hydroelectric power plant that has been implemented in North Sulawesi, Sumatra, since 2016, has contributed to improving the power supply shortage in the region and also reducing CO2 emissions by more than 30,000 tons per year. So we'll continue our best in cooperation with Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Kenji-san. And I now want to move on to the discussion on climate finance. As everybody has recognized, we need $100 billion per year of climate finance as agreed by the Paris Climate Treaty, but we are not reaching that target. We are about $20 billion short in 2020. And for developing countries, this is important issue because you know, it's one of those things. You do that, we do this, and you do that, right? You know, as part of the common but differentiated responsibility theme, right? So I suspect that a lot of developing countries will start asking what's going on with the $100 billion pledge. And I think that will be part of the success of COP26 in Glasgow. Yeah. So does anyone want to comment on this? You know, how do we get there? You know, what are the difficulties? Is it because of the COVID-19 budget stress that we're not going to be able to deliver that promptly? So anyone want to comment on that? Please do. Yeah. Climate finance. How do we get to $100 billion per year? Yes, I see Vincent. Yeah, and anyone else? Please raise your hand. I see Owen, and then yes. Okay.
I'm happy to give the answer for the EU. I can't answer for the rest of the world community, so I can't answer for the 100 billion. But I can say that. Historically, over the past couple of years, the EU has paid up what I think is more than its fair share of the climate bill, if you like. In the year 2019, our funding was about 23% of the 100 billion. And if you look at it from the point of view of the CO2 emissions that the EU produces, then this is a good figure. We produce 8% of the CO2, global CO2 emissions, and so we will continue to honor our commitment. You've heard from a few member states ambassadors what they will be doing at the bilateral or the member state level. At the EU level, we will continue with an increase by about 25% of the funding made available from the EU budget for developing and emerging countries. So it will amount to 7 billion euros over the coming four years. So that is what I can say, and we know very well that this is also a matter of definition, of having good definition of what is climate finance and what is not repackage what we used to pay as development aid in general, but really come forward with a credible and substantial offer from the EU side.
And is there a sense, is there any constituencies in Europe that are resistant or critical of EU giving so much money to climate finance? Because, you know, it's taxpayers' money. Is there any part of the political factions who say, no, we shouldn't be paying for that? Vincent, sorry.
I'm happy to share the question with others, of course, but I don't think fundamentally that is the case. There is a fairly constant political support for funding, helping the emerging and developing world for this. Also, the opinion polls in general show a high degree of popular support. Climate action is defined as the top priority, together with dealing with COVID, evidently. But so no, I don't see that happen. There is a bit of a crunch, possibly as a result of the COVID funding that we've had to raise over the past year. But we're certain that we can deliver on it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm giving next to Ambassador Marina of Sweden, and then Ambassador Owen afterwards. Yeah, Marina. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Dino, and Your Excellency, Vice Minister. Of course, thank you so much for your very valuable remarks, Vice Minister Mahendra Sirgar, His Excellency, and all colleagues. It warmed my heart see so many ambassador colleagues participating here today. And thank you very much to the FPCI for arranging this and inviting all of us. Yes, of course, we agree, everyone, that reaching a climate secure future need global efforts. And I want to emphasize in my intervention here is that all actors have to be involved. And the Swedish government policy is definitely geared to and supportive to the private sector, and also demand industries to take their share and actually do participate in the climate actions. And what gives me hope right now is to see in Sweden that Sweden as a whole will do our part, reflecting development in the real economy. In Sweden, we are seeing at the moment unprecedented and accelerated actions that is transforming both industry and finance. We have, for instance, companies now aiming to put fossil-free steel on the market by 2025. And also, we have our financial sector that is aligning their portfolios with the Paris Agreement. And I'm talking not only about the private part, but also the of course, public financial actors. They have a clear timelines to phase out coal power, coal finance, and the exploration and extraction of fossil fuels. And also, Sweden hopes to be the front runner when it comes to sustainable export financing. Because, as my Norwegian colleague said, we have to do our part globally and support developing countries, of course. So both our private and financial institutions have official export credit our official export credit agencies have taken important decisions to align with the Paris Agreement. And as such, and by 2022, there will be no official Swedish export credits to investments in the exploration and extraction of fossil fuels. Most importantly, what I'm trying to say is that we have to work together, private and public sector, and joint efforts are the only way forward. And let me end by saying that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador Marina. Owen, you're next. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Pagdino. Let me say some things as COP president and some things as United Kingdom. So we very much recognise that delivering on our climate finance commitments is a critical part of COP and critical to achieving the overall ambition which we know we need to reach in order to achieve the Paris Agreement goals. We understand that achieving the 100 billion a year is a matter of trust. It's a matter of moral responsibility. And so as president of COP, the UK has made achieving that goal one of our top priorities. My Prime Minister has talked about coal, cash, cars and trees as the 4 priorities for COP. And we are extremely active at the very highest levels to encourage those developed countries who have not yet made strong commitments in this area to do more. On a national basis, I'm proud of what the UK is doing. We were one of the first countries to announce a doubling of our climate finance to £11.6 billion over the next period. That's around 13.5, 14 billion euros or dollars. And we have protected that despite cuts in other areas as a result of COVID-19. We are retaining that commitment. So in answer to your question, Pagdino, certainly as far as the UK is concerned, there is not that trade-off. So we will keep pushing both nationally and as COP president. We understand the responsibility. We know we have to deliver, and we know we also have to ensure the private sector can invest alongside the public sector to really accelerate this transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan. And you know, I think that was a very important point that you raised, and also by Ambassador Marina, that yes, there's this $100 billion climate finance by governments that are expected. But for the public who's watching this, keep in mind there are $53 trillion of ESG assets. ESG is environment, sustainability and governance. $53 trillion, not 100 billion, way more that are available out there from the private sector. And I think it's important for Indonesia, as much as we push for the 100 billion climate finance worldwide, but also to find ways to seek access to that $50 trillion of ESG assets. And that can only come if we have a very strong and credible climate policy at home. Yeah. So now I want us to go to the question of energy transition. I like what Pa Owen said just now, that you know, the key words cash, coal, and trees. Yeah, wonderfully summarized. And for many countries, including Indonesia, the big question is how do we phase out coal from our energy system? Because energy will become the largest source of emission in Indonesia, right? And I suspect this is true also for China, for India, and other countries. Now, in Indonesia, I've spoken with at least 2 big coal families. One of them have said that they have plans to divest towards away from coal and into other sectors that are cleaner. And another big family is already making plans to divest, but they don't want to make it public yet. But you know, the point is, you know, things are moving. Although you know, it's a debate how much of the coal industry are willing to be phased out. Yeah. So can I ask any comments from the ambassadors? What is your thoughts on this? How do we phase out coal? How do we transfer technology to do so? How do we convince the established coal industry to move themselves out of their industry and still find you know, good profits doing so, and so on. Yeah. And If I see Ambassador of India, I think you are one of the most pertinent countries on this question. Please, Manoj, your floor is yours. And then after that, Kenji, yeah, and then after that, Ambassador of Vietnam, yeah.
Thank you, Upadino. I would only like to emphasize one point here at this juncture, and that is the emphasis that we have given in India on utilization of solar power. India currently has the fastest growing solar energy program in the world. We have expanded access to clean cooking fuel to over 80 million households, and also the initiative of International Solar Alliance, which has been initiated by India and France together. That requires more participation, including from countries like Indonesia, who are the prime users, who can be prime users of solar energy, which is perhaps the best alternative to the fossil fuel, coal, etc., that you just spoke about, and in terms of transition to safer, greener sources of energy. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ambassador Manoj. And by the way, of course, everybody is looking to India. Ambassador Manoj has a big coal country, and what India does, everybody follows, including in Indonesia. Yeah. So we have high hopes on India's coal policy.
Thank you.
Ambassador Kenji, I see you raise your hands, please.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me this floor. As Dr. Dino said, how we can balance out decarbonization and energy security is really a difficult issue for any country. And in Japan, as in the case of Indonesia, the energy sector accounts for about 90% of our GHG emission. And we all know that as the so-called electrification of the society continues, particularly in the transportation sector, the demand for electricity will inevitably increase to a certain degree. So how we can decarbonize the electric power sector is becoming all the more important. And in the case of Japan, we, of course, promote decarbonization by maximizing the use of renewable. In the case of Japan, we put emphasis on offshore wind power and also use of nuclear technology, as well as mixing biomass, hydrogen, ammonia in the existing power plants, and also CCUS technology, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So all these policy mix, we try to achieve carbon neutral. Thank you.
Ambassador Kenji. Now I invite Ambassador Pan Vinh Quang from Vietnam. Ambassador, good to see you, Ambassador. And after that, Finland, and then after that, Germany. Yeah. This is starting to feel like the United Nations General Assembly. All right, please. Ambassador of Vietnam, please. Hey, coba. Suara. Can you unmute? Is that right? Ambassador, can you? Okay, now we hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Selamat pagi.
Selamat
Good morning, Pak Dino, fellow ambassador, Indonesian colleagues and friends. Climate change represents a great global challenge for our time and is shaping the future of mankind. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions is a matter of national interest for Vietnam, one of the most vulnerable countries to global climate change. According to Global Climate Risk Index 2020, Vietnam is the sixth most affected by climate change. Therefore, Vietnam is determined and strongly committed to take climate action and develop a green, sustainable, and low-carbon economy as pledged for the COP21. Vietnam was one of the first 20 countries in the world submitted the updated national determined contribution in September 2020 and has unconditionally committed to reducing GHG emissions by 9% below business as usual level by 2030. Vietnam is committed to a conditional reduction to 27% below EIU if it gets international support. Vietnam have also mainstreamed its commitment into domestic law for enforcement. Vietnam advocates the development of a green, circular, and low-carbon economy. We will greatly reduce coal-based power generation and rapidly increase the share of renewable in the total primary energy supply to 20% by 2030 and 30% by 2045. We will reduce the intensity of greenhouse gas emission per GDP by nearly 15% by 2030. In April 2021, Vietnam launched a program to plant 1 billion trees by 2025. This project alone is expected to absorb 2 to 3% of Vietnam's total emissions by 2030. In addition, we believe that the international community needs to further strengthen international cooperation activities, including supporting developing countries in finance, technology, and capacity to join achieve our common goal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. I thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Ambassador Quang. And next, I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Jari, Finland. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Actually, Kenji-san already he made a very exhaustive list of all the possibilities, and Indian colleague Manoj he mentioned the solar energy. I just wanted to mention a very practical thing that Indonesia has quite a lot of coal power plants, and then one kind of like very concrete possibility would be to use boilers that can burn also biomaterials, either solely biomaterial or with the coal. So that would be kind of like a gradual way to reduce the carbon emissions from the coal power plants. And then one kind of like a positive note, I was participating in an event yesterday where there were people from Pertamina, and they said that they are investing more and more on geothermal energy. This is not that we in Finland have a big expertise on that, but I'm happy about that, and that's it. I stop here. Thank you.
We have a video from the Italian ambassador on this coal, so let's hear what he has to say. What is a 1-minute video? Please put it on.
Over the next decade, we must reduce as much as possible CO2 emissions produced by fossil fuels and other greenhouse gases, including methane. We must work to adapt our infrastructure to climate shocks that have become increasingly frequent and violent. We need to reach a global agreement to stop the use of coal as soon as possible, eliminate subsidies for fossil fuels, and promote the use of renewable sources, which can also be an engine of tremendous economic growth. And we must listen more to young people who have often been agents of change and can give us a much needed push to do more, faster and better.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I want to add, I think, 2 things why it's a difficult thing about phasing out coal. One is now the coal price is very high, yeah, and the coal industry is making heaps of money out of the very lucrative coal price at the moment. And secondly, the coal industries are politically powerful, right? They're not just politically connected, but there is some government official. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. But let me go to Ina for Germany. Yes, please.
Terima kasih, Pak Dino. I completely agree with previous speakers that phasing out coal and decarbonization is a huge challenge, including in Germany, which still relies heavily on high carbon fossil energies. But we believe that the economic recovery from the pandemic offers a unique opportunity for a sustainable transformation of our energy sectors. Because the point is not just to fill gaps within the existing setup, but to transition to a better path that is sustainable. In our recovery measures, we have therefore decided to invest heavily in renewables, innovations, and new technologies to decarbonize our energy industry and transport sectors. And I think this aspect of using the pandemic funds available should also be taken into account in considering how we can make this transition. Terima kasih.
Actually, I've been asked to complete my earlier statement. Phasing out coal will require a political decision, right? Because you know, some of our politicians actually own coal industries, right? So you know, things are a bit politically complicated. But I think you know, there's growing public consciousness about the need to remove coal as a dirty industry, and there's enough international examples where doing so would be even more profitable to do so. But okay, Ambassador Vincent, floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, just to highlight that the question about coal is in Europe is very, very real, and it is a fact that member states depend on coal and fossil fuels to different degrees, and we have to take on board that the differing starting points for the energy transition. So just to say that it's not a simple black and white situation, but there's a lot of gray and green and in between. Secondly, phasing out coal is of course a function about how fast you can phase in and increase renewable. You have to have alternatives for what you phase out, and I think that's where I think over the coming periods the emphasis will shift. That yes, yeah, the EU will and the EU member states will tax what is dirty and brown and dark, and it will support what is clean and green and sustainable at the same time, and so that interface has to work. Otherwise, of course, you run out of options in your energy mix, and here, that's the last point I would add. Of course, there is a tremendous role for the private sector. That's true for Europe. That's true for other countries, including Indonesia. Provided the regulatory framework is good for investment in renewables, provided renewables energy sources have access to and get access into the grid, then you can make it work and a viable option for companies to invest in. And I think here, of course, I'm particularly looking forward to the adoption of a renewable energy bill in Indonesia, which I hope will provide that type of access and place for renewable energy.
Thank you, Vincent. And the last question the last response is from Ambassador Denmark, and then we move on to the next phase of the discussion. Ambassador Lars, please.
Thank you so much, Dino. Also, thanks to colleagues for all the good remarks here. Let me just highlight, I think, 3 issues here. One is, as you say, Dino, this is a political decision. It is my understanding, my sense that many people now also in the government understands that the time has come to make a strategic decision. What is the positioning of Indonesia? I think this also goes in connection with the upcoming G20 presidency. And as I said before, we can see globally there are plenty of opportunities arising from transitioning into a more green direction. And I think this is not only about cost for the coal sector, it's also about establishing new opportunities for Indonesia. And their timing is of essence, because the sooner you move, the more opportunities you'll get. And I think, at least in my reading, the government also understands this in Indonesia right now. Secondly, you pointed also rightly so, Dino, to the international context here. One is the chit-chat we were having here. Let me also highlight the pledge made by the Chinese President Xi only a few weeks ago to stop for financing of coal-fired power plants. I think this is immensely important also for Indonesia here. And it is, I think, a clear sign that this discussion is going in one direction. And then the third element is the more social element. And I think that's where we can maybe work a little bit more with the Indonesian authorities, not only at the central level, but also at the local level, because there will be issues of local simply employment or social issues arising. And I think we should all try to collaborate there and see how we can mitigate these effects. Thank you so much, Dino.
Yeah. Thank you, Lars. And last year, at the end of last year, FVCI made a statement saying that 2021 is going to be a big climate change year, and there were two things that will drive policy change in Indonesia. One is the international attention on climate change will revive, and like it or not, Indonesia has to be part of that international debate and processes. And secondly, the domestic public opinion will begin to shift towards climate and sustainability issues. And those two things are exactly what is happening now. And President Jokowi has very progressively moved Indonesia's climate policies. Not there yet, not 2050 yet, but at least it's been moved from no net zero commitment to net zero 2070 to net zero 2060 and earlier, which is quite encouraging, right? So the last phase of this discussion, I want to invite ambassadors to make any statement, and we can count this as the closing statement by ambassadors on the question of how do we ensure collaboration to ensure a 1.5 degree world that we all seek, or at the very worst, 2 degree world that we seek. How do we work together to achieve net zero? Because it can't be a situation whereby a dozen countries commit to net zero and the rest don't commit, and in the end, the climate security that we all seek will not be attained. So everybody has to do their part. Collaboration is the key. Everyone has to reduce ambitions. But I would love to hear your comments on how do we get there? How do we achieve this genuine international collaboration? Yeah. Please. Yeah. Maybe I start with Denmark first, and then Egypt, European Union, and Finland, and then I'll call on the next four. Yeah. Lars?
Yeah, well, I think I just spoke just now. I think this is showing the increasing support for Indonesia, but also for the global movement that we're seeing. I welcome very much the broad position that we have amongst the table here today. And I think we all have the job of reflecting upon what can we bring to the table, because we all have different perspective, different background, different national experiences. And I think this is the time really to step up and to show this is a global effort. But this is also what we're doing. And I thank you so much, Dino, for your effort to bringing us all together. Thank you.
Yeah. Ambassador of Egypt? Yeah.
Well, good morning, Excellencies. I think it is important to continue working through the different negotiations group to ensure a successful outcome on the issues of climate finance, carbon markets, transparency, agriculture, etc. Egypt supports the call of the UN Secretary General to split climate finance 50-50 for adaptation and mitigation, and calls upon developed countries, international donors, and financial institutions, including the Green Climate Fund, to take this into consideration during the replenishment of funds. On climate finance, reaching the $100 billion goal annually, which was agreed upon, still represents a big challenge that needs to be addressed. I think also it is important to raise the ambition for adaptation, mitigation, and means of implementation, which depends on three very important factors that are finance, technology transfer, and capacity buildings. I believe that is important to reduce the gap between developed and developing countries, as Ambassador Piquet was saying, regardless of our differences in our strategies or starting points. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador Ashraf Sultan. And let me now go to Malaysian Embassy. Yeah. I see Pak Adlan Muhammad Shafiq. Please. Yes.
Thank you, Pak Dino. First of all, allow me to thank Pak Dino and FPCI for inviting us and hosting this wonderful webinar. Excellency, you mentioned a lot of issues just now, which we totally agree when it comes to the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. Malaysia cannot underline enough on the role of developed countries in taking the lead in addressing climate change by providing new, adequate and consistent financial assistance and technological transfer, which Pak Dino had mentioned earlier, to support developing countries' mitigation actions as well as adaptation to climate change. We also look forward to continuing negotiations with other state parties on the Paris Agreement at COP26, particularly on Article 6, which Ambassador Kenji had rightfully mentioned regarding carbon market mechanism. This is very important. Just to share with you what Malaysia is doing, Pak Dino, we have an ambitious target of the nationally determined contribution, or the NDC, with an increase of 10% to 45% unconditional economy-wide carbon intensity reduction target against GDP compared to the previous NDC, whereby Malaysia aims to achieve that target based on our own capabilities. We regard this target as progressive, reflects its highest possible ambition, given that the mitigation actions will be undertaken domestically, which excludes the purchase of carbon credits from other countries. I thank you.
Thank you, Sharjah, Pak Adlan. I want to go next to Ambassador Armando of Mexico, and then after that, India. Yeah. And then after that, I see Vincent nodding. See, go ahead, please, Mexico. Armando, yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay, a very brief statement. I would like to say only that international cooperation for development is one of the principles that has been consecrated in the Mexican Constitution itself, and that there are few areas where it is more imperative than climate change cooperation. And that is why Mexico, as a middle-income developing country, seeks to foster South-South and triangular cooperation schemes to support other partners in achieving more ambitious adaptation, mitigation goals, and reductions of emissions in accordance with development priorities for each country. So Mexico focuses on scientific and technological cooperation and the promotion of research capacity building regarding adaptation and mitigation. Considering Mexico's strategic geographic position, we strive to develop partnerships with Latin America and the Caribbean to foster regional development. And of course, we work in the global arena in the frame of the COP26. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Armando. Next is Ambassador Olivier from France, and then Vincent from EU. Oh, sorry, India first. India first. Ambassador Manoj, yeah.
Aapke baad.
Dhanyavad. No, I first of all like to thank you once again for this timely webinar. But as a last comment, I would like to mention that to better integrate climate change adaptation and peace building, we can seek the building of robust governance structure at the local, national, and regional levels to address climate and fragility-related risks. This not only improves public perception of government legitimacy, but also shores up capacity of states to address climate risk before they become fragile. Donor countries should provide greater financial, technological, and capacity building assistance to help fragile states to put in place necessary adaptation and mitigation strategies to combat the impact of climate change. Here I would like to say that countries with big economies which have moved to the level of advanced countries should also take responsibility for carbon financing and sharing of this responsibility. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Manoj. But I do want to highlight that if all the developed countries cut their emissions by 0 today, right, we're still not going to get to 1.5 degree world, right? China has overtaken the United States as the largest emitter in the world, and so on and so on. So we need to figure out a way on, yes, common but differentiated responsibility, but how do developed countries and developing countries punch above the weight together to deliver within the next 10 years, the next crucial 10 years, the most ambitious emission reduction target possible. And for the public out there, I just want to tell you a simple formula, which is to achieve net zero by 2050, you need to reduce emission globally by 50% in the next 10 years, and then 50% again from 2030 to 2040, and then 50% again from 2040 to 2050, right? And if we don't start from now, right, and if we engage in debates that doesn't lead to ambitious emissions, then 2050 net zero will not be achieved, and 1.5 degree world is going to be missed. Yeah. All right. So now, sorry. Next, we go on to Olivier, Ambassador of France, and then Vincent. Yeah, yeah. And then I see Owen and Kenji after that. Yeah. Please.
Thank you, Dino. We covered all the main aspects of the fight against climate change. So I'll be very brief. And we consider that the carbon pricing mechanism is one of the key elements in the fight we are all engaging. A fair carbon price is the key to the reduction of the carbon emissions, and in that case, France welcomes the fact that Indonesia is more and more involved in this topic, and Minister Sri Mulyani, as co-chair of the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action, and the fact that Indonesia is in the middle of the preparation of the introduction of a carbon tax is something very important, because Indonesia is one of the key players in this matter. Terima kasih.
Vincent, can you hear me? Yes, please.
Thank you. In a way, I would like to speak after member states and give them the floor first. But let me just a couple of feelings from my side after the discussion. First of all, I think we've got a very large convergence of views amongst all the participants coming from all different parts of the world and different economic situations. So large convergence that we've got to work together on this, and that it is possible. And secondly, I think a key message would be, from our point of view, is that yes, it is possible to cut CO2 from your economy, and at the same time to grow your economy. I think the EU has ample evidence of that ever since 1990. Other countries have got that too. And I think that is a very political, very important political, economic concept that we need to spread in Indonesia as well amongst all policymakers. Third comment is about the energy transition. It's a very tough one, but it is also something that is already taking shape. We see it, that we can promote very, very practically by sharing the know-how that European countries, other developed economies have in carbon pricing, in the emissions trading schemes. We know all the good things. We have gone through the pitfalls in these, and so we can share a lot with Indonesia. And the very last point, sorry for taking so long, is about the forest. And here this is the asset of Indonesia. The EU has to plant 3 billion trees by the year 2030 in order to create extra carbon sink. Indonesia has already got those trees, so it's a matter of keeping them. And to complete the process of stopping deforestation, you've done a lot in Indonesia, but pull it up to the end, and after that, I think you have a wonderful track record that will also be very important reputation-wise for your country if it comes to the natural commodities. Thank you.
Okay. So we have 5 more. We have Japan, UK, Ireland, Finland, and Sweden. Kenji-san, please.
Well, thank you very much for giving me this floor. Just to wrap up, I think we need to encourage countries in the Indo-Pacific where economy is growing to come up with workable and realistic roadmaps to achieve their goals, and also pursue international cooperation, repeating that the importance of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And as you know, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to researchers of climate change this year, happened to be including Japanese-American Dr. Shukuro Manabe. And I hope that this event augurs well for the success of COP26. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenji-san. Pa Owen?
Thank you very much, Pak Dino. You asked how we would get to where we needed to be at COP and how we would do it through collaboration. I would highlight 3 things. So firstly, to recognize the urgency. We are already in a world which has warmed by over 1.2 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times, and we've committed ourselves to stopping at 1.5 if at all possible. We have very little time left to do this. The second is to use what we have, to use our collaborative shared institutions, the United Nations Framework Convention, COP26, and our other shared bodies to deliver on this. I think there's a reason why we have so many ambassadors here today and we've heard such common messages. We know what we have to do. Let's use our institutions to do it. And then thirdly, on a national basis, I think it's important to set frameworks which can deliver. In the UK, what we've tried to do is consistently set long-term policy frameworks which attract investment and give businesses certainty that they will be working in a low-carbon, sustainable environment, and that has helped drive investment into our clean industries. And a final word on Indonesia's role. Let me pay tribute again to the extraordinary work which Pak Mahendra and his colleagues in the Indonesian government have done. I think Indonesia has a huge role, not just because of its amazing natural inheritance, its huge potential on renewable energy, but also as an independent and respected voice in the world. I think Indonesia's chairmanship of the G20 next year will be the next critical vehicle for taking forward momentum from COP26. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pa Owen. Ambassador Francis of Ireland.
Thank you, Padino, and thank you for organizing this very interesting and very fruitful webinar. I'd just like to make some general remarks. The COVID pandemic showed the great global interdependence we have. None of us can be affected by problems in any part of the world. Difficulties for one country become difficulties for us all, and we are already starting to see that with the effects of climate change. However, the global pandemic also showed the great capacity of governments to work together and to find solutions to global problems, and vaccination is the key example here. So we should not underestimate, and we can't underestimate the scale of the challenge we face, but also we should not underestimate the scale of the capacity of the governments of the world and the private sector to work together to find solutions to global problems. So Ireland looks forward to COP26 and to working with all our global partners, notably Indonesia, to find ambitious solutions to this global problem. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Pa Francis. And now, Pa Jari from Finland. Jari?
Thank you, Dino. I'm kind of thinking of the end users of this webinar, the FPCI members, and came up to the kind of appeal to them that most probably you will become business leaders or political leaders later on. So Dino already mentioned that Finland probably has the world record in setting the target of carbon neutrality 2035, and our sectors, they need to find solutions how to reduce in kind of like faster than the others, how to reduce their emissions. So if you want to if you want to find partners later on, think of Finland and join the bandwagon for the future. That is my very bilateral message for FPCI members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jari, for that encouraging message from the world champion. We'll give you a gold medal. Sweden, Ambassador Marina. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Tino. I'm sorry my camera doesn't work. I've tried so many different ways of fixing that, but I hope you hear me. You put a $10 million question to us, Tino, asking us how do we ensure collaboration to keep the 1.5 degree objective. And of course, but I feel positive, not least with this event, showing that so many countries are involved. And I'm positive mainly because of three reasons. And first of all, we have a very strong global public opinion right now that will not accept anything but a positive outcome of COP26. And secondly, we have engaged the private sector widely, globally. They are engaged in investing and in developing innovative and high-tech solutions to combat climate change. And thirdly, and finally, I must say, we are all listening to scientists. Finally, we listen to what they say, and we have governments that really cooperate with scientists and try to find solutions in order to combat the climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Marina. Next, Ambassador of Vietnam, Ambassador Quang. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Dino. As I mentioned before, reducing greenhouse gas emission is a matter of national interest for Vietnam. Therefore, Vietnam supports net zero emission by 2050 and is determined to make every effort to contribute to this goal. Of course, this is a challenging goal, but also an opportunity in terms of creating new jobs, ensuring energy security, improving the competitiveness and sustainability of the economy. But Vietnam is a developing country. Raising the level of commitment is a big challenge for a low middle income country like Vietnam. Vietnam had just updated and increased its commitment to reduce emissions in its NDC for 2020. Still, relevant agencies in Vietnam are making effort to review to be able to make a feasible new commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at COP26. In this process, we need international cooperation and support in terms of finance, technology, and capacity. I thank you. Terima kasih.
We have the last two comments from Ambassador of Norway, Ruth, and then Ambassador Ina Lapel. Yeah, Ruth. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for this opportunity. I think a lot of very interesting points have already been made, and well, climate change is a truly global issue. What happens in Indonesia has consequences on what happens in other countries. And I think it has been said by several of the participants that the key issue here is how we can ensure more support to developing countries, to Indonesia, for their already strong climate policies, including the issue of climate finance. And I think, Dino, you mentioned a very interesting question you raised earlier on in the debate, which was around the public support in our societies far away from Indonesia. And I would just like to echo what my colleague from Sweden just said, that we have public opinions who demand action. We, including supporting developing countries in their for them to have stronger climate policies. We recently had elections in Norway only a month ago, and this was in many ways said to be like a climate election, focusing a lot, of course, on Norway's own transition from being an oil-based economy to a more climate-friendly actor in the world. but at the same time, also a very strong focus on how we can support other countries. And we are expecting our new government to be sworn in this week. I am very keen to start working with them because I know that the commitment to supporting Indonesia in this area is very, very strong, and I really look forward to helping facilitate this dialogue on how we can continue the dialogue with Indonesia and support in whichever way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And final word from Ambassador Ina Lepel.
Thank you very much. I'm very encouraged by the degree of convergence that I notice here, that practically all speakers recognize the importance of working together. I think everybody will do their part. And I would just like to stress that it's very important to focus on concrete measures. And in this regard, there is the critical role of coal to be taken into account. So we need to have policies in place that lead to a coal phase out early in the coming decade. We have to keep the coming decade in mind, otherwise we will create a burden on future generations. And I think we also have to keep in mind cooperation between the generations, apart from the cooperation among countries. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ina, and I want to thank all the ambassadors, but please stay for the next 4 or 5 minutes because we're going to show you a video that we're quite proud of. We produced a celebrity video calling for net zero Indonesia by 2050 and 50% reduction by 2030. And the reason why this is important because we believe that this video had something to do with the government policy change. The video was produced by FPCI and included celebrities in Indonesia that has a combined followers of 50 million people. And when we made this video, we sent it to all government officials. And politicians can say no to FPCI, we're nobody. But you can't say no to celebrities who have 50 million followers combined and so on. You don't want to be seen arguing with them, right? But before we show that video, I just want to say 2 or 3 things, quick things. One is, look, I know I heard the argument from Vincent today and from many others that, hey, growth and conservation can go together. You can pursue green policies and make money, right? And to be brutally honest, Vincent, I think that theme, although it's very true, is still a hard sell in Indonesia, right? And I think many in the government and business and the parliament are yet to be convinced of that, right? So I think we gotta make stronger efforts to make them really convinced that, you go green, you make more money, right? And at the moment, we're not there yet. And secondly, I think the biggest challenge for Indonesia's climate policy is that it relies too much on the forestry thing, right? On the land use thing, right? Which is very important, of course, a large part of the equation. But on the energy side, is still quite weak. Especially the biggest question of how to phase out coal. There's no clear answer and no clear roadmap and policies as yet. And this is going to be the biggest policy challenge in the next, I think, 10 and 20 years, right? The third, I think we should make the Indonesian government understand that don't go to COP26 expecting polite conversations, right? Because this is going to be a tough debate. Right, you're going to have to push and argue and counter-argue, and you may need to scream if you need to, right? And that's totally fine because it's such a big issue where everybody is involved and everybody needs to, take down the gloves and really get into tough arguments, right? I say this because I think the mindset is that let's just go there and make few statements and then we go home, right? That's not what's going to deliver bold decisions at COP26. And this is not true just for Indonesia, but it's also true for other countries. So the mindset should be like going to a boxing ring. Let's resolve world climate problem with serious discussions, with honest discussion and strong debates. Even if you need to scream, it's fine, as long as you find a solution. And the last message is to EU. I know that Vincent mentioned 3 billion trees by 2030. As an Indonesian coming from the jungle of Sumatra, you can do a lot better than that. Yeah, I remember when I was in government, we had 1 billion trees planted in 1 or 2 years, I forget, right? And then 5 billion trees, you can check the numbers, in just several years, right? 5 billion trees in several years, right? In Europe, you can do a lot better by 2030 than 3 billion trees. And if you need more land, come to us, pay for the land and plant the trees there, right? You'll be most welcome, right? So with that, again, I want to say thank you. I told you earlier this was a party where everybody invited actually responded and came, and they came with the fanciest dress and really strong, important statements. And I want to invite all of you to watch the video of Indonesian celebrities, which, in my view, did make an impact, policy impact on the government. Yeah, and actually before that, please, for everybody watching here, please join the EU Climate Diplomacy Week that is going to unravel all this week. The address is in the chat room. Yeah, you can see in the YouTube chat room the address of the EU Climate Diplomacy. It's going to be exciting insights that you're going to find about climate change. Yeah. Thank you very much, all the ambassadors, and please watch the video before we end. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Saya Mika Tambayong.
Saya Krisdayanti.
Saya Kalista Iskandar.
Saya Reza Radian. Saya Chico Jericho.
Saya Chelsea Islan.
Saya Cinta Laura Kiel.
Saya Dian Sastrowardoyo.
Saya Wulan Guritno.
Saya Julia Stel.
Saya Yoshi Sudarso.
Saya sangat semangat menyongsong Indonesia Emas.
100 tahunnya merdeka pada tahun
2045 nanti.
Kita semua di Indonesia bermimpi dan menginginkan agar bisa mencapai tujuan Indonesia Emas di tahun 2045.
Sungguh suatu capaian sejarah yang indah dan luar biasa dalam perjalanan bangsa kita.
Nggak kebayang betapa hebatnya Indonesia Emas nanti.
Insya Allah pada tahun 2045 saya akan mulai mewariskan Indonesia kepada putra-putri saya.
Di usia NKRI yang 100 tahun nanti,
saya ingin kita semua hidup dalam Indonesia yang Pancasilais,
yang modern,
maju,
makmur, sejahtera,
hijau, adil, aman, bebas korupsi,
demokratis,
dan tentunya bersatu.
Tujuan tersebut bukan tanpa tantangan.
Ancaman terbesar di tahun 2045 bukanlah pandemi.
Bukan lagi kemiskinan atau kebodohan.
Bukan separatisme.
Bukan perang nuklir. Bukan invasi militer dari luar.
Ancaman terbesar bangsa Indonesia
di tahun 2045 nanti,
the mother of all problems adalah
pemanasan global,
di mana suhu bumi rata-rata akan naik
3-4 derajat Celcius.
Itu adalah suhu terpanas sepanjang sejarah manusia. Suhu terpanas di bumi kita yang sudah berusia 4,5 miliar tahun.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
Saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia Emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
Dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana.
Polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang. Hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria. Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
Dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030.
Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai nol emisi di tahun 2050.
Ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim.
Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi. Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia
2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.
Thank you to all ambassadors and representatives who have joined us today at our Ambassadors Roundtable on raising ambitions for a climate-secure future. We have heard earlier statements on climate commitments and climate actions from ambassadors from 18 countries, and what we can conclude is that, yes, we are committing to climate action right now, but what we're doing is nowhere near enough. Even if the developed countries or West countries committed to reach zero emissions by today, we won't even limit global temperature rising to only 1.5. We have to mobilize climate finance. COP26 will have to deliver and secure the money, and we have to somehow phase out coal globally by 2040 and for all developed nations to phase out coal by 2030. With this regard, I would like to invite all of our participants today to sign our petition, FPCI's petition, on change.org/darurat iklim while we call on the government of Indonesia to target net zero emissions by 2050, no later than that, and to cut our emissions by 50% by 2030. I would also like to encourage all of participants to follow FPCI in the coming weeks, especially nearing COP26. We have more climate initiatives that we will be launching. Don't forget to sign our petition also, and let me encourage you to also participate at the EU Climate Diplomacy Week. You can go to climatediplomacyweek.id for more information, or social media on uni_Eropa for more information. Thank you again to all of our ambassadors who are joining here today, and also for all of our participants and viewers on YouTube. See you at the next FPCI event. Thank you. Thank you, all ambassadors.